Like, subscribe, and comment to the Doctor of Disaster. It was the great Edward R. Murrow who said, "A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves." As we continue on into part 3 of this series, How Did America Get Broken?, we looked at media and social media. We found that biased reporting is evidence across all forms of media and social media and on a multitude of subjects for a multitude of reasons. Along with that, we also found that research shows that Americans are definitely influenced by media reports. We also found that depending on how stories are framed by the news organization and social media, they can, and sometimes do, incite violence, create discord, and expand division. We also found out that studies prove social media has been weaponized to hurt the common person. Social media fuels confirmation bias and creates online echo chambers. And finally, social media can serve as an easy conduit for political echo chambers. So as we start today, let's talk about the media. We have the mainstream media, and the mainstream media absolutely skews the news to fit their narrative. It becomes an echo chamber, and we'll describe what an echo chamber is in a little bit, but they become echo chambers for those with the same ideology, whether it's religious ideology or it's political ideology or some other ideology. And that's where people will go to the ideology of their news. Now, a lot of what we hear on TV has been biased. We see Pinocchio here, fake news. Former President Trump is the one that started pushing that issue, fake news. And to be honest with you, there is a lot of fake news. 77% of the people in the United States believe major TV and newspaper reports are fake news. So how did we get to this point of bias? It's crazy. We are so bombarded with all this news, and all of it has a biased twist. You rarely can find news media reports without a bias. I mean, even if you go on YouTube, just like you're watching me, everyone has their bias, but some don't portray their bias as much as others. What do we mean? Well, let's look at some examples. In this, we see that NBC says economy's job engine revved up in July. And if you look over to Fox, it says wrong way growth. Jobless jumps in July as new hiring remains slow. This is on the same day. What about the election with Bush and Gore? Same day, Bush wins. The other paper, too close to call. How about the same newspaper? Trump softens his tone. Trump talks tough on wall. Same day, same paper. If you look at this cartoon, yes, it's a cartoon, but if you look at it, different people, different papers, one liberal, one conservative, totally opposite. So how do we know what's correct? In 1950s, researchers discovered that people do not just randomly listen to every word that the media says. Instead, they focus on certain messages as a result of specific social or psychological needs or beliefs. So, will people even listen? Well, we have a whole handful of references out of thousands that talk about how not only the media spins stuff, but how Americans choose to listen to it. Once again, I'm going to use the term echo chamber. In some instances, the way the media frames a story will affect depression, it'll create anger and fear, and it will likely incite violence. Deborah Serrani, who's a psychologist, said all the way back in 2011, news is a money-making industry, one that doesn't always make the goal to report the facts accurately. They are going for ratings, the media is. And it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong in most instances. They just say whatever they think will sell. You know, there's the old saying, if it bleeds, it sells. She also goes on to say that watching the news can be a psychologically risky pursuit, which could undermine your mental and your physical health. In this article, she says, if it bleeds, it leads. That's the main thought behind how the media goes. And, you know, these stories affect our psychology. It instills fear and sometimes anger, and it messes with our minds. Because they have fear-based media in most instances, there is fallout that affects children and adults alike. If you are exposed to the media as a child or an adult quite a lot, you typically feel that your neighborhoods and communities aren't safe anymore. You believe that crime rates are rising and overestimate your own odds of being a victim, and you tend to consider the world a dangerous place. This is problematic, to say the least. You know, it's like the old joke, be careful not to spread fake news. Leave that to the professionals. That's kind of where we're at in this country. Of course, former President Trump once again pointed out a lot of the fake news. However, the stations he watched also provided fake news. And, you know, a lot of people are getting to the point where they can't separate the real news from the fake news. And the fake news is so divisive that a lot of times it causes us to break down, and it causes our country to break down. Another important factor to consider is how social media is used. There's a case study by Reinhard Geil and Inks, and it's called The Weaponization of Social Media. And that's a dangerous trend too. In that case study, it says the impact on communities at risk of or experiencing crisis weaponization phenomena causes them harm in a variety of forms, including physical, when an individual or group is targeted by violent action; psychological, when an individual or group is harassed, intimidated, or exploited; social, when an individual or group is ostracized or defamed by their community. How many times have we been on social media in this cancel culture and seen fighting between politics or social belief? Let's talk about the abortion debate. How do people talk to each other about that? What about Trump versus Biden? How crazy does that get? And that further divides this great country that we live in. There are 4 ways social media is weaponized. The first is information operations, and that's coordinated disinformation campaigns that are designed to disrupt decision-making, erode social cohesion, and to delegitimize their adversaries. Think about it. Our last election, here in 2020, we had sleepy Joe Biden, and we had the nutcase Trump, the authoritarian Trump. We had Joe who was losing his mind. You think that's weaponization of social media. Then there's political manipulation. Disinformation campaigns can be used to systematically manipulate political discourse, including, but not limited to, influencing news reporting, silencing dissent, undermining electoral systems, and strengthening authoritarian leaders. Let's think about this. How often was the news media reporting something that may not have been true, or failure to report other things that may have been true? How about this cancel culture? If I don't agree with you, screw you. I'm not listening to you. I'm going to ostracize you. Undermining the electoral system. We still, as Americans, don't know if there was cheating, mass cheating during the elections, or if they were legitimate. Why? Because there was disinformation from both sides, and neither one could prove it. Strengthening authoritarian leaders. That's pretty simple. When you have people that will follow you blindly, and you've got an authoritarian leader, that's how it works. Now, political manipulation normally has 3 phases. The development of the core narratives, then it's hiring influencers and creating bogus accounts, and that's self-explanatory, but they hire people to push their narrative. Sometimes people do it for free. And then bombarding social media. There's also digital hate speech. Social media platforms hugely amplify hate speech. This allows individuals and organized groups to prey on the existing fears and resentment between people. Social media hate speech motivates and inspires some violent actors and sparks violence. This violence occurs both intentionally and sometimes unwittingly. And this is all coming from this case study. There's also radicalization and recruitment. Some may understand this, some may not. But just think of how ISIS recruited people from Canada and the U.S. and France and England. They used social media, and because they saw that it was inexpensive and it was easily manipulated, that's how they did it. That's how radicalization of liberals and conservatives also carries out. Whether it's someone like a white supremacy group or Antifa or left liberal groups that are hate groups. According to Jason Ong and Jason Cabanillas, no technology has been weaponized at such an unprecedented global scale as social media. Folks, that should scare us. And we should also start paying attention. Unfortunately, social media has a habit of creating an us versus them mentality. And when there's that us versus them mentality, there is division, not only on social media, but it expands to our country. Now, why does this happen? Well, confirmation bias is one of the reasons. What confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret, and recall information in a way that supports what we already believe. And this came from the Literacy Center. So how does confirmation bias work? Well, if you're doing research and there's confirmation bias, you have a theory and you find the evidence to support it. You don't let the evidence guide you. On social media, they use algorithms that supercharge confirmation bias. And part of that is we have created echo chambers. What's an echo chamber? Well, we surround ourselves with people that believe the same way we do. And we don't listen to dissenting voices or the other side. And the algorithms also push that. The news feeds from Facebook and Google and all of the rest of them, Twitter, they all feed into our confirmation. And we feel like we are the majority, whether we're the majority or the minority. And when that happens, we can't understand why the other side is so crazy. If we look at the cartoon, it says simply type in the candidate of your choice and step right in to the echo chamber. So we tend to deal with people that think like us. That's just like this cartoon. The old man standing at Echo Point, and he says, thanks for the great political discussion. We have become a society that follows those echo chambers, and whatever happens, that's what we do. We only need to look at UC Berkeley. And all of this started on social media, and they shut it down. How many times has Ben Shapiro or some other conservative was invited to speak at UC Berkeley, and they were turned away because it would get violent? That is the problem. Social media feeds into this, and we think that anyone that doesn't agree with us is racist or xenophobic or some other thing, and it feeds into everything. We have gotten to the point where we don't listen to others, and that's part of the problem that has broken America. As I close this week, I want to quote Margaret Hofferman. She said, "A thinking partner who isn't an echo chamber." How many of us dare to have such collaborators? Folks, I'm here to tell you, we need to start talking with each other. We need to start working with the other side. The confirmation bias and the echo chambers, they're destroying this country. I have a good friend who is more liberal leaning, and I'm more conservative leaning. And we talk from time to time, and we actually discuss the issues, and neither of us gets angry, and we end up agreeing to disagree. But at least we see the other side. Now, we need to start really focusing on doing that. However, social media, the algorithms that they have, pushes us away from people that disagree with us and focuses on people that agree with us. So we have to, at some point, tell social media or instill in social media that we want to be well-rounded individuals, not laser-focused on what we believe. And of course, social media has bias, and they use fact checkers to fact check stuff that often is not true. So how can we trust media or social media? Perhaps it's time to go back to the old ways without social media and media. I mean, if this is what it's going to cause, is the division of this great nation, then it's not worth having, in my opinion. Well, that is going to be it for today. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. We have one more part in this series, and it will be on schooling, how schooling affects the division in our country. Until next time, Be safe. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. The Doctor of Disaster is a wholly owned subsidiary of Warnick & Associates Incorporated.